Steve. I'm a huge supporter of sanctuary. I think that it's the model for resistance. Resistance always comes from the ground up, and it always requires community, and it requires a multiplicity of fronts, whether that's food or media or education, all of which sanctuary does. So I always am thrilled to come to Troy. I admire very much what sanctuary does. So this talk is called American Sadism. Sadism defines nearly every cultural, social, and political experience in the United States. It is expressed in the unchecked greed of an oligarchic elite that has seen its wealth increase during the pandemic by $1.1 trillion, while the country has suffered the sharpest rise in its poverty rate in more than 50 years. It is expressed in the wanton killings by police of unarmed citizens in cities such as Minneapolis. It is expressed in the enhanced interrogation techniques used by the CIA at secret black sites, Guantanamo Bay, and in our prisons at home. It is expressed in the separation of children from their parents, where they are held as if they were dogs in a kennel. It is expressed in the pornification of American society, where women are tortured, beaten, degraded, and sexually violated, often by numerous men in porn films, and then discarded after a few weeks or months with severe trauma, along with sexually transmitted diseases and vaginal and anal tears that must be repaired surgically. It is expressed in the incel movement that perpetuates violent assaults against women by men who say they have been spurned or ignored by women. It is expressed in the predatory healthcare system where, as Steve Brill writes, a trip to the emergency room for chest pains that turn out to be indigestion can exceed the cost of a semester at college. Simple lab work done during a few days in a hospital can be more expensive than a new car. And a drug that requires $300 to make, and that the manufacturer sells to a hospital for between $3,000 and $3,500 can cost the patient to whom it is prescribed $13,702. It is legally permissible in the United States for corporations to hold sick children hostage while their parents bankrupt themselves to save their sons or daughters. This sadism is expressed in payday loans, for-profit prisons, the privatization of public education and public utilities, and the rise of for-profit mercenary armies. It is expressed in the cultural glorification of violence by mass media, the state, and the entertainment and gaming industries. It is expressed in the nihilistic mass shootings at schools, including elementary schools and workplaces. And it is expressed in the murderous and futile wars we prosecute or support in Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. The historian Johann Huizinga, writing about the twilight of the Middle Ages, argued that as things fall apart, sadism is embraced to cope with the hostility of an indifferent universe. No longer bound by a common purpose, a ruptured society retreats into hedonism and the cult of the self. It celebrates, as corporations on Wall Street or popular reality television shows celebrate, the classic traits of psychopaths: superficial charm, grandiosity, and self-importance, a need for constant stimulation, a penchant for lying, deception, and manipulation, and the incapacity for remorse or guilt. Get what you can as fast as you can before someone else gets it. This is the state of nature, the war of all against all Thomas Hobbes saw as the consequence of social disintegration, a world in which life becomes solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. It is a world in which powerful men like Jeffrey Epstein or Harvey Weinstein reduce bodies, the bodies and selfhoods of their victims to nothing. We know what this sadism looks like. It looks like Derek Chauvin nonchalantly choking to death George Floyd as his police colleagues watch impassively. It looks like Andrew Brown Jr., shot 5 times by police in North Carolina, including once in the back of the head. It looks like Abner Louima, who had a broomstick pushed up his rectum by police in a bathroom at the 70th Precinct Station House in Brooklyn, requiring 3 major operations to repair the internal injuries. It looks like the Navy SEAL Special Operations Chief Edward Gallagher randomly shooting to death unarmed civilians and using a hunting knife to repeatedly stab an injured, sedated 17-year-old Iraqi prisoner and then photographing himself with a corpse. It looks like Iraqi civilians, few of whom had anything to do with the insurgency, naked, bound, beaten, and sexually humiliated and raped and at times murdered by army guards and private contractors in Abu Ghraib. It looks like the prisoners in Abu Ghraib who were routinely dragged across the prison floor by a rope tied to their penises and were sodomized by chemical lights, or had chemical lights snapped open so the phosphorus liquid could be poured over their naked bodies. The leaked pictures from Abu Ghraib are the true face of America. The hooded man, a dark, caped figure standing on a box, arms outstretched, wires attached to his fingers, or the naked, leashed man lying at the feet of the female American soldier in camouflage pants who holds his leash one end wrapped around his neck in her hand. Why is the malaise of a dying civilization expressed through sadism rather than a kind of righteous anger? And here we must turn to Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche warned that though...
Okay, we're all back. I put that on. If anyone knows this guy, he's a journalist, Chris Hedges. I recommend watching the whole lecture on it. He's just basically talking about the end of America and the degradation of the society we live in and this oppressive system that we live in. And I thought and think it's appropriate for the discussion that we're going to get in today. We're dealing with the 9-ball. This is count 4. This is the last book. We did part 1. We did part 2. Last week, we did part 3. And this week, we're going to do part 4. This is a series of books the master teacher had put out over 50 years ago. And as I've said many times before, it was relevant 50 years ago, and it is relevant today. Of course, there's some updates, and that's what we're going to discuss. What the master teacher was trying to say 50 years ago, and where we are today in these teachings. Okay, so that's what we're going to be dealing with today. Now, for those who do not know me, my name is Petty Sina Teptu with A, and I've been a 30-year student teacher of the profound doctrine of the master teacher, known to us as Panabab Yananan, also known as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who has been teaching us our ancient culture that we identify as Wu-Sabat or Wu-Nawap. And this culture is about those who make decisions based on sound right reasonability. And he has dedicated his life for over 50 years now teaching us our ancient culture, because the what we argue is that Black people are suffering all over the world, and is due to our decisions that we're making. And our decisions are not sound and they do not reason out, and it's the cause of our suffering. This is what we argue. And so we say the only solution to the problem is for us to correct our decisions. When you correct your decisions, you make better decisions, the outcome of your life would be better. And we say it is best to get back to how our ancestors made decisions when we were able to rule ourselves. And so this is what we have dedicated ourselves to. And I'm just one of many students who have been teaching our ancient culture to help our people in their decision-making ability, so that we can focus on getting back to being able to rule ourselves once again. And we cannot do that until we restore what we call our higher mind, our higher level of consciousness. And it is in our ancient culture, which we identify as Wu-Sabat, or what we call Wu-Nawab. So we greet everybody who is new, who are watching this recorded and who's watching this live, and we would greet everyone who's been with us for some time now. And we're on this journey together. And our goal is always liberation from adverse forces. This is what we're dedicated to. Now, every week, what we try to do before we start our discussions is we do our prayer systems, right? For those who are familiar with our prayer systems, we always say it in our language, which language means Lahaj, which is Sabaic. And for those who are watching, you can see the English version of it, so you can follow us as we do it. The purpose of the prayer system is for our spiritual development. Okay, we argue the two things that Black people are suffering from for the last 6,000 years is their racial blindness, because we've been a divided people, and our spiritual ignorance. We've lost our knowledge of spirituality. And a human being is one part physical and one part spiritual, and that is what makes us complete. But we are now existing only as human beings and not understanding the spiritual aspect of ourselves. And so we do rituals for the sole purpose of helping us, or helping re-educate us to develop our spiritual concepts. And prayers and chants and meditation are a part of those rituals. So this is why we do the prayer system. So I welcome any and all who wants to join. We will begin. Abdul Kalam Namasat Wabazun the man Kasam on far paut. Anuki Jawap Pa Ashuk Impa Paut. Wo Kala Ashuk Kawum Jawaf Naya. Anuki Kasamun Impa Paut. Wo Pa Paut Kawun Kasamun Im Naya. Anuki Wahu Ama Pa Paut. Wo Pa Paut Kawun Wahu Ama Naya. Naku Kador Naju Ama Kasamun Impa Paut. Wo Kabu Ama Shikasun. Naku Kador Kawan Kalab Pafaf Nakuk Daya Jawap Pa Paut. Ama wasu ama daya ni kuun lake bakui jawab pa paut. Anuki yabab bin fasni. Pa pot kuun. Anuki. Pa pot kador. Nakuk kador. Pa pot amu. Nakuk amu. Lahehum manehnun. Layahum manehnun. Ahumata karahum. Ahumata karakum. Ahumata karanun. Ahumata jawafnaya. Ahumata nayawu anuki hum. Ye ashuk re'e. Asmua jaye nun. Ye notaro afuk nun. Anunata khara ukum. Ye notaro afuk nun. Afuk nun. Afuk nun. Ye unataro nun. Anun. Atun. Atun. Ye unataru. Namazo wahu. Ye mufaku. Yehu, Yehu, ye notaro. Yesaya, Yesaya, ye notaro. Yehika, Yehika, ye notaro. Antkum ata pa mufaku. Yehu, Yehu, ye notaro. Antkum ata pa mufaku. Wu anum ata khara'ukum. Wu ankum ata yasanun. Yehu, Yehu, Ye unataru. Akhfush muklas num atum re'e. Yehu, Yehu, Ye unataru. Namazo atu akhfush anhu. Ye mukdam u akhfuknun. Ankum mana yaka laduda salafunun. Wu yasa'unun. Mana yaka sawura pa ba'a. Mana yaka kawuna ka'u. Mana yaka ata akha. Mana yaka kawuna bashawu damam. Ye nataru mukdam unun. Akhfush muftad nun. Anhu kawun manza mana pa nataru. Akhfush anhu. Anhu kawun baba yananun. Akhfush anhu. Anhu kawun atum re'e. Akhfush anhu. Anhu kawun khafush. Namaz o talu. Ye nataru salafunun. Akhfush nun mana pa mujwa'u. Akhfut nun mana taghuan. Ye nataru akhfut nun. Mana saya khayara. Akfut nun, akfut naya, akfut nun, akfut naya. Ye nataru nun, namazo rabu pa tashun. Nakuk talub tashun bi pa nataru. Mana pa la endawi tananum. Kala ranum atni ata laha pa nataru. Wu kala namazo atni ata laha kayad iyatun laya pa nataru. Pasawa wu pa tara. Panansafa kawun pasawa wu pa tara. زي كون نزول لها أنتكم مناس باء وساء أما هدي أن وشفيء مناس لافكم ودنطارو أجول يا نفاسكم أفوك شنا كونكم باسوا وباترا با هدي أن وبا شفي أن نون تاو أنتكم لها بنان شفي وعلاج أن نون تاو أنتكم لها تمنا سوينون أن نون تاو أنتكم لها أشكما أنكم آت السلافنون أنون آت خراؤكم أنون تلوب نساكما أنون تلوب نساكما أن سو نون سيم نطارو أن سو نون سلافنون أنون آت منواقو آنون آتون آتون Amen. Ye nataru nun, ye muftau, ye nataru, ye atum bre, ye nata, ye nun, ye nata, ye nunta, ye natata, ye ha, ye nata, ye hata, ye natata, ye kak, ye nata, ye kakta, ye natata, ye mun, ye nata, ye munta, ye natata. Ye mufkamu, ye nataru, ye atum, ye nata, ye shawah, ye nata, ye tafaf nata, ye natata. Ye sabab yanata, ye nata yanatata, ye ashta yanatata, ye asa yanata, ye nabata hata yanatata, ye satak yanata, ye harak yanata. The Tara Shalil Pa Meye, ye haptu yanata, ye nakta yanatata, ye ha haratu yanata. The Tara Shalil Pa Nawar, ye nafatum yanata, ye mantu yanata, ye babti yanata, ye schamta yanatata, ye hata harata yanatata. Ye bai bish yanata, ye fa yanata, ye basta yanatata, ye emhata yanata. الطار شلل با هواي ينهو ينهو ينطا يمتا ينطاتا يمها ينطاتا يخاف رأي ينطا يمسكنا ينطاتا يه ريتا ينطاتا يكنتمنتي ينطا يهيكا ينطاتا يه نطاتا ينطاتا يما ينطاتا يه رننتا ينطاتا يشي ينطاتا يساشا ينطاتا يمافدا ينطاتا الطار شلل با تها يسباق ينطا يناب ينطا ye khanum yanata, ye khanash yanata, ye funun yanata, ye saya yanata, ye hakta yanatata, ye amash yanata, ye sababtu yanata, ye atum re yanatata, ye tahutu yanata, ye fawara yanatata, ye sakata yanatata, ye ha yanata, ye naheb ka yanata, ye saka yanata, ye ba'a yanata, ye aka yanata, ye emharata yanatata, ye wapawata yanata, ye sakata ye saka hatapta yanadata, ye merita sakata yanadata, ye sayeta yanadata, ye garata yanadata, ye sa inu yanada, ye bahata yanadata, ye khanamta yanadata, ye monakta yanadata, ye khamam yanada, ye mahatu yanada, ye kabeb sinan afaf yanada, ye da mata afaf yanada, ye merita yanadata, ye nasa yanada, Yem Dadata, Yanadata, Yanakakbata, Yanadata, Yasakata, Yanadata, Yanakta, Yanadata, Yadad Yanada, Yatum Yanada, Yawahu Yanada, Yasach Yanada, Yanaku Yanada, Yafnu Yanada, Yasata Yanadata, Yasakatu Yanada, Yama'a Yanada, Yana Yanada, Yamnuet Yanada, Yam Sataktu Yanada, Yamudalta Yanadata, Yarahashafaf Yanada, Yamaratu Yanada, Yamun Re Yanada, Yehu Anun Ata Kalad Jawah Paot Nun Re Tun Re Tun Re Mun Re Jennifer. Okay. And again, for those who are new to our rituals and what we do the prayer system. And then after the prayer system, we move into a chant, right? And so I was just chanting. Well, actually, at the end of the prayer system, we do what is known as our Unctwi symbol. You guys can see that behind me, the Unctwi symbol. We don't do the cross, so don't confuse that with that. So I want to make that clear. The cross is a symbol of death. The Unctwi is the symbol of existence and life, resurrection, right? So that's the symbol in which we do. And then we move into a chanting, right? The purpose of the chanting is about recalibrating your cells of the body to alter your, what we call your morphic resonance, to raise your vibration, right? And it is the process towards helping one open their third eye. So like, for instance, when I was doing a chant, what happens is you feel a vibrating energy in the center of your forehead as you begin to develop this, and that's it's like opening the channel up, so to speak. So as you guys practice those things and begin to develop those abilities, you'll feel these energies. You'll also feel energies along the back of your spine, okay, because you're opening up centers there. So as you begin to do these things and to develop yourself, you'll feel these actual spiritual and physical changes in the body, right? And so this is why I'm doing it, to introduce you guys to the concepts, to show you how to begin these processes for your own edification. Okay, so now as we go from the prayer, and every week what we do is we go over our core principles of Wu-Sabat / Wu-Nawat. What does it mean to be a Sabian, right? And what are the principles that we stand by? And this is extremely important because a lot of our discussions, as you guys know, has been based around teaching you guys the essence of these core principles. You must embody these principles, okay, as a student of Wu-Sabat. So principle number 1 is Ashak, right, which stands for the power of love. That is the force of 9 ether. Ashak is the force of 9 ether that grew existence itself, okay? And principle number 2 is resurrection. The goal is to become goddesses and gods by opening your third eye, restoring your divine memory again, right? And principle number 3 is the wisdom of Dietary and Ma'at. Dietary stands for the divine mind, and Ma'at stands for order. Principle number 4 is relationships. As Africans, we live of, for, and by each other, right? In harmony with one another. Our culture is not based on capitalism. Our culture is basically what they call an egalitarian culture, where we live of, for, and by each other, right? Principle number 5 is morphic resonance / matrix. Morphic resonance deals with sound, color, vibration, frequencies. It is how the universe itself creates, is based on these frequencies, and it produces what we call matrices. And principle number 6 is soul and spirit. Your soul is your emotional force, your emotional body, and your spirit is your life force. Principle number 7 is Leviathan. Leviathan stands for moon culture, aka religion, aka Western culture. That's what we're at war with, is Leviathan. Principle number 8 is health, right? Health is, first point of health is having a positive mind, having much sunlight, drinking a lot of water, fasting at least once or twice a week, having a herbal diet like the Dr. Sabi diet. Exercise is extremely important. Rhythmic breathing, meditation, concentration, prayer, and chanting. Health is physical and spiritual. Complete health is physical and spiritual. In the culture we live in, they only teach you about physical health, but they don't teach you about spiritual health. And in order to be a complete being, you must develop both sides of your nature. And the last principle is number 9, which is pa'ut, which is existence itself, based on the SMAT circle, and the creative force is right? And this is what the 9 Bowl is all about. This is what you guys have been learning about the SMAT circle, okay, in detail, and about the creative force, pa'ut. So this is important. Now, let's keep going. Now, once you choose to become a Sabian, you have 3 primary goals we talk about every week, right? So the goals of a Sabian is, number 1 is to raise the self. Number 2 is to fight Leviathan. And number 3 is to work to build Sabbatia. Now, when you go back to goal number 1, raise the self is about being born again, as the Christians teach, by learning the culture of Wu-Sabat and live it, right? So you're giving up an old culture for a new culture. Now, in your goals, your first goal is to correct your name by choosing a Sabian name and make it known to all, right? You must correct how you look and dress. You must learn to speak Sabian. You must study our doctrine every day. You must practice and master our daily rituals, and you must always be positive. You're not going to get anything done unless you're positive. And goal number 2 in fighting Leviathan, this includes working to free Panabab Yananan, right? The master teacher. So that's like tremendously important. And promoting Wu-Sabat to all, and to become a student, teacher, and fight the 5 strongest weapons of Leviathan, which are lust, lies, deception, slander, and gossip. Okay. And then goal number 3 is work to build Sabbatia. We work to support each other in business. We help each other reach positive goals. We help to build our government. And we must set up a landing zone for Panathato in Africa, which means we need land in Africa that would be supported by an African government. Okay, Ashak is the key to accomplish all our goals. Now, what does it mean to be a Sabian? A Sabian is someone who is thoughtful and cares, someone who is helpful and honest, someone who is responsible and hardworking, someone who demands justice, someone who is righteous, someone who is positive and cheerful, someone who is loving and peaceful, someone who is clean, and someone who is kind and considerate. Okay. So that is what it means to be Sabian. We go over that every week, and it's important that you guys master these principles. I can't say it enough. All right. So now let's get into our discussion for today, which is the 9 Ball. This is count 4. So like we said, we already did counts 1, 2, and 3. And this is the last count, which is count 4. Count 4, as you guys can see, came out in 1972, written by Wu-Nupu, Asa Nupu, and Naba Nupu. Okay. Let's see. And so now we're at let's see, paragraph 1 of the 9 ball. Now, the section A. So it talks about what we call the 9 Nuban guides. The 9 Nuban guides. Okay. So paragraph 1. Now, in this booklet, we Nuban scientists will only take the space to outline the 9 Nuban guides instead of detailing them. The 9 Nuban guides are those words, formulas of motivation and activation which propel Nubans to success individually and as a race. In other words, any Nuban who has the durability and intelligence to adhere to the word formulas called the 9 Nuban guides will survive through the ages and be successful. Now, in paragraphs 8 and 9 of count 1, we mentioned that the words Ethiopian and Nuban mean the same. A Nuban is a woolly-haired Ethiopian. So when we say Nuban, we mean a person or persons with genuinely woolly hair, meaning genuinely kinky hair. Paragraph 2. The 9 Nuban guides are: 1. I promise to preserve self at all times to the best of my knowledge, wisdom, and understanding and ability. 2. I promise to have sexual relations with no one but the opposite sex of my own kind. 3. I promise to eat and drink only those gases, liquids, and solids which will be more beneficial than harmful to my mental and physical selves to the best of my knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and ability. 4. I promise to be a Nuban first to the best of my knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and ability, then whatever else I wish to be. 5. I promise to advocate 9 knowledge and adhere to 9 knowledge to the best of my scientific information, wisdom, understanding, and ability. 6. I promise to treat people of other races the same way that they treat me to the best of my knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and ability. 7. I promise to uphold justice and rightness at all times to the best of my knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and ability. 8. I promise I will fight hard for liberation and freedom for the Nuban race, and when it is liberated and free, I will work just as hard to keep our liberty and freedom preserved to the best of my knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and ability. And 9, consequently, I promise that before my physical death, I will arrange for my lifeless body to be cremated and the remains distributed at the roots of an evergreen tree or some other suitable place willed by the deceased. I also seriously promise by Nuban forces of nature, by this 9th guide, to maintain the promises of all 9 Nuban guides for an existence in liberty, freedom, preservation, well-being, and success, with the understanding that if I fail to keep my promises to the best of my knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and ability, I will soon join the physically dead. Paragraph 3. We shall briefly explain number 1 of the 9 guides. Now, complete self is not just one individual. Complete self is all those of a kind. All people of the same race is one being. A race is one being with many parts, and those parts are the individuals of that race. So the promise to preserve self is the promise to protect self and kind in every possible and practical way. Reproduce with self with own kind. Do not be an aggressor, but do not hesitate to practice self-defense whenever and wherever it is practical and needed. People who love self enough to preserve self do not use tobacco in any form, neither strong drinks nor any form of dope or narcotics. However, in protecting self, do not stick your neck out in mankind's society for the unintelligent who refuse to accept 9 knowledge and practice 9 knowledge. Paragraph 4. Now, number 2 of the 9 guides restricts reproduction to the existence only among those of the same kind. That is, those of the same race. This restriction is also a part of self-preservation, and self-preservation is the first law of nature. Eternal life is the continuous procreation with the opposite sex of your own kind. Therefore, it is very desirous to have a son among the offspring of a family because a son continues the blood lineage. Now, guys, we have updated that. We have also made it correct that it's the female bloodline that actually carries our descendancy. Okay, so that's very important. But let me keep going. Now, the sex with own kind principle prevents a race from destroying itself, and likewise prevents people of other races from destroying it by miscegenation. Now, the newborn male is very fortunate to have the richest female in body on the planet, and this is the woolly-haired female, and we must learn to protect her in every way and provide for her. The Caucasian male struggles to keep males of other races away from his females. Well, now they don't. Maybe they did 50 years ago when the master teacher wrote this, but they're letting their women be with anybody nowadays. But let's keep going. Now, because he knows if other males obsess his females, his race given time will become a multitude of hybrids and mix-ups and members of no particular race. In other words, the race loses its identity, and that is destruction. We must also strive to maintain our newborn identity. Now, of course, you know, your hardcore white supremacists do practice that, guys, as we know. It's kind of what Trump was talking about, make America great again. That was the basis of his slogan, to get back to the way they used to be hardcore white supremacists. But let's keep going. Paragraph number 5. There is fact in the expression that a person is what he or she eats. And this expression launches us into number 3 of the 9 guides. If a person eats or drinks something which he or she knows is not fit for consumption, or him or her, that person is unintelligent and thereby is mentally dead. The one supreme being is nature in general, and the one supreme being is our physical lives, because we feel, eat, drink, taste, and breathe the one supreme being. The one supreme being is our mental lives, that we must study and understand it by analyzing and learning of it. The one supreme being is food, clothing, and shelter. It is all persons, all places, and all things. Paragraph 6. Guys, and if you have questions along the way, do not hesitate to ask questions, okay, as I keep going. Paragraph 6. Now, each part of a person's physical self, which has a different composition than another part, is composed of a different formula. And those parts different in composition require a different food. That is, the kind of food which possesses the formula of that part. When a given part of the person does not get the formula necessary for its survival, that part begins to degenerate, and the person starts to suffer from some kind of disease or ailment. Ethiopian communities everywhere need mentally resurrected dietitians who can teach Ethiopians what to eat, how much to eat, and when to eat. Most seafoods with scales are all right to eat. Most fowl that is not birds of prey is all right to eat. Fruits that are suitable for your digestive system are all right to eat. Nuts like peanuts are all right to eat, because peanuts are not as hard to digest as some other nuts, because they are not as heavily and oily as some others. Now, just an update on that. One of the things the master teacher said, really, we shouldn't be eating anything with parents. We should not be eating anything with parents. But of course, a lot of us still eat meats. But the goal is to get to the point, like I always talk about, a Dr. Sabi diet, right? Where we get away from flesh totally. And that's a work in progress. Now, whether you can accomplish that as an adult, the most important thing is for us to not feed that to our children, you know? So it's one thing we have bad habits, but it's another thing correcting those bad habits with your children. Let's keep going. Paragraph 7. Yet raw jumbo peanuts are very helpful to those who are bothered by too much stomach acidity. All vegetation that is not poisonous and it is agreeable to the person is all right to eat. Of course, artificial drinks are poisonous to the health, and the water and fruit juices available to the person should be as fresh as possible and as pure as possible. Now, of course, alcoholic drinks are completely taboo for mentally resurrected Ethiopians. The air we breathe and the water we drink should be very clean and fresh, and smoking tobacco and marijuana cloud the lungs and bloodstream. In short, anything that will cause a person more harm than benefit should not be consumed. If an intelligent person knows that something does him or her harm, then help, he or she will not indulge or should not indulge. Paragraph 8. Mentally resurrected Nubians try hard to follow and adhere to higher standards in nature, and trying hard to be a Nubian first in the world of mankind is no exception. Being a Nubian first is number 4 of the 9 guides. Be a Nubian first, then whatever else you wish to be means this. Before doing any serious talking or taking any sincere action of any sort, first determine if it is in the best interest of the Nubian race as a whole, because if what you say or do is best for the Nubian race, it is best for your Nubian family, including your Nubian self. What is best for the race is also best for its component parts. The Caucasian race knows this, and practice this is one reason why it is much more unified and much stronger than our race. Being a Nubian first helps strengthen us by race and recognition so that we may become what we wish to be as an individual. Paragraph 9. There is an old saying, you know the tree by the fruit it produces. By the same token, you know a mentally resurrected Nubian by his or her activities. Advocating 9 knowledge may be one thing, and adhering to 9 knowledge may be another. You heard the expression, put your money where your mouth is. By the same ethic, put your adherence where your avocation is. If one advocates 9 knowledge, that person should be adherent to it. That is, practicing 9 knowledge. Avocation and adherence should coincide as one. If a person talks 9 knowledge but does not follow through on the practice, that person does himself or herself more harm than benefit, and thereby is unintelligent. Anyone who would genuinely will adhere by nature is a Nubian by race, but only those who can understand and practice 9 knowledge are Nubian by mind. Be intelligent and accept no alien culture and no alien religion, and only hold fast to that which is of your own only. This paragraph briefs us on number 5 of the 9 guides. Now let's continue to number 6 of the same. Paragraph 10. Mankind has practiced discrimination against Nubians as far back as their history can be found. Now it is time for us Nubians to reciprocate by destroying the one-sidedness of this biasness. That is to say, the guide which commands us to treat people of other races like they treat us means be a perfect racist and practice racism the way it should be practiced, and that is equally. One-sided racism, which is the way mankind practice it, is wrong. There is nothing wrong with racism if it is equal racism, the kind that maintains this warning to peoples of other races, meaning I will not exploit you and you don't exploit me. I will not try to postulate you and you don't try to postulate me. I will not try to pervert or sex your females and you don't try to pervert or sex my females. I will not try to take what rightfully belongs to you and you don't try to take what rightfully belongs to me. This is the way to practice equal racism with peoples of other races. Paragraph 11. Number 6 of the guides also means if people of other races treat you bad, treat them worse if they are the aggressor, and therefore your worst treatment to the aggressor is only equal or the same as their bad treatment of you. And speaking of equality brings us to number 7 of the 9 Nubian guides. For justice and rightness work in unity with equalness. In fact, the two are based on parity. Now, I want to make that clear. It's not about us treating anybody worse or bad or anything. It's about defense and protection and making sure that no one abuses us the way they abuses us today, because they kill us with impunity and they get away with it. And we have no recourse because we don't have the power to deal with the oppression that we deal with, you know? So we have to fix that. But let's keep going. Paragraph 12. A person can be only as just or as right as the knowledge he or she has access to, and only as just or right in accord with correct knowledge, as his or her nature dictates. In other words, a person cannot be just and right if he or she does not have the definition and knowledge of justice and rightness. And even though a person may have the definition of knowledge and knowledge of these factors, he or she can only practice them to the degree that his or her nature is just and right, unless forced into them further by circumstances. Justice is the balance of the opposites in accord with the cycle in which one lives. Justice is eye for eye and teeth for tooth, because an aggressor, according to the laws of nature, does not get returned to him or her just the amount of damage he or she did, but must also pay for being the aggressor. Now, I want to make this clear. We're not in the business of punishing anybody. We're in the business of defending and protecting ourselves against all aggressors. The ultimate goal is to make sure that no one can harm you. That is the ultimate goal, and to make sure that they don't continue to harm you if they do harm you. That's our goal, okay? And so, like, I always want to reiterate or clear that we've written these things 50 years ago. The master teacher put this information out, and we've definitely have modified our culture and cultural practices in this day and time. So I always want to make that clear. Let's keep going. Paragraph 13. When anyone tempers justice with mercy, it ceases to be justice any longer. We willie-haired Nubians represent justice by nature because we have the greatest capacity for reaching the highest standards of nature and maintaining them. Get and read Booklet 2 of Bible Interpretations and Explanations by Aminui Ro'akta. For that booklet will further detail the nature and laws of justice and rightness. And also, guys, that's the next series we're going to go over, okay? Just so you know. Let's keep going. It will suffice here to state that justice and rightness are the nature of us Nubians in our just cycle and in our right mind. Our right mind is our 9 knowledge mind, our mind of 9 reason. We Nubians are responsible for restoring true justice and rightness because mankind, being animal, is not capable of reaching and maintaining the state of real justice and rightness. Paragraph 14. Those who practice justice are also practicing rightness. Rightness is the laws and way of general nature. The dictates of the nature of a person, place, or thing are rightness for that person, place, or thing. In other words, the nature of a thing is right for it because a thing exists best when it adheres to its own nature. Now, some people believe, or beliefs means one does not know, that going to church makes people good or right. But this is false belief, as most religions' beliefs are. The facts are, whether a person goes to church or not, that individual will do whatever his or her nature dictates. If the person is positive by nature, he or she will be as right as that person has the knowledge and ability to be, whether he or she goes to church or not. And on the other hand, if a person is negative by nature, he or she will do the wrong or negative things which the person's nature demands, whether the individual goes to church or not. Paragraph 15. Hence, rightness for a person, place, or thing is its own nature. However, the higher standards attainable in absolute nature, which is all space, all matter, and all time, by its laws are the highest form of rightness and justice practicable. And this is the target of all Nubians to shoot at. The target to shoot at is outlined in the booklets, the 9 Ball, and all Nubians who are enlightened or mentally resurrected will fight mentally and physically when reasonable and practical for our liberation and freedom and maintenance of them once they attain, as number 8 of the 9 Nuban guides requires. There is nothing wrong with fighting verbally and violently for our liberation and freedom when we have a chance to win. It is foolish to fight physically when we only have a chance to lose and see ourselves put deeper into captivity and oppression mentally and physically than before. There is no liberation and freedom attainable in a world of animaldom without bloodshed. But that bloodshed must be on a battlefield when we have a chance to win, and the bloodshed must be mostly from the veins of the enemy. Paragraph 16. A person should defend himself or herself mentally and physically at all times to the best of his and her knowledge and ability. But it should always be done as reasonable and practical as possible. That is to say, when you do not have a chance to win, you will destroy yourself by trying. Use your best mind first at all times for self-defense. Then whatever else you can succeed in doing. There is no victory in death as the dead would have us believe, unless it is the death of the enemy. Death is defeat. When you shed more blood than the enemy, that is defeat. When you suffer more death than the enemy, that is defeat. When you fight verbally and physically with the enemy, and when the fight subsides, the enemy is still in the best in whatever you were fighting over, that is defeat. Let's fight, but fight when and where it is reasonable, practical, and winnable. It is reasonable, practical, and winnable for us to fight first with 9 knowledge. For 9 knowledge gives us Nubans the proper guide and helps the sun change the gases of the atmosphere to our favor. Our minds emanate gases. If our minds are negative, the gases are negative and against us. If our minds are positive, the gases are positive and for us. And positive gases of 9 help the 9 sun change the atmosphere to the positive cycle that is growing now. The gases of the atmosphere working on and with our minds are what control and rule. Okay. And so the sun emanates ether gas. The sun emanates ether gas. And so does the mind. And the mind, when the mind is negative, you're putting out negative gases in the atmosphere. When the mind is positive, you're putting out positive gases in the atmosphere. And this is why we always say you have to always be positive, guys. And that's why we focus on tapping into the power of love. Okay? Let's keep going. Yeah, I see it. Okay, now Al asked the question. I will get back to that question. No problem. Okay. Paragraph 17. But ghouls, ghosts, and demons in the atmosphere and in people will control and rule us Nubans so long as we allow our dead bodies to be buried instead of cremating. In other words, as long as we follow the doctrines and ways of the dead in mind and those who represent the dead in body, we will continue to be held captive and oppressed by the dead. Now, number 9 of the 9 Nuban guides require that we cremate our deceased relatives and the flesh of all dead animals, which is not stored for food, for that their bodies cannot ferment death gases that permeate the atmosphere and strengthen and multiply ghouls, ghosts, and demons in general, because in turn, these spirits of death exist by preying on the living, by subsisting on their blood, and by causing oppression, suppression, repression, disease, murders, insanity, sex perversion, deformities, etc. And all of these activities are acts of negative forces of nature called conscious death gases, who cause suffering and death through mankind so that those negative forces may survive. Burying dead bodies of anything instead of cremating them increases the power of the dead, which are the negative forces of nature, to prey on the living and cause the physical living to suffer bloodshed and die. Paragraph 18. Cremating dead bodies help lessen and destroy negative forces and help break the spell of their control over us, that we may live longer and in greater ease. A dead body should be cremated as soon as its identity is established and those concerned have had a chance to view it. It should never be allowed to reach a point of odorous decay. It should be cremated immediately and the remains deposited at the roots of an evergreen tree or some other suitable place willed by the deceased or determined by the relatives. Now, number 9 of the guide also provides for sworn adherence to the promise made by the Nuban with 9 ether, the Nuban forces of nature, that he or she will exist in liberty, freedom, preservation, well-being, and success as long as these 9 promises are kept to the best of the Nuban's knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and ability. And if the Nuban does not keep his or her promise to his or her forces for his or her own survival and well-being, that person has committed suicide and will physically die because he or she does not, well, he said, does not deserve to live. Now, we don't agree with that. You know, we have updated that. So, and I don't agree with that. It's not about no one not deserving to live, but we're unfortunately a very foolish people today. I'll just say that and move on. Paragraph 19. Now, Nubans, male and female, read and study these 9 Nuban guides carefully and in your own way. After understanding and accepting 9 knowledge, pledge to your creative forces, the 9 ether sun, that you will forever adhere to the 9 Nuban guides. And by the forces of nature, in time, you will be liberated mentally and physically and be successful in anything you decide to undertake, provided it is in accord with the 9 Nuban guides and the 9 knowledge in general. Remember, what seems to be best for you to do as an individual may not be best for your race as a whole, but what you do that is best for your Nuban race as a whole is always best for you and your immediate family. Let's discard the former and practice the latter. It is the intelligent thing to do for survival and well-being. Okay, section B. Why empires rise and fall. Paragraph 20. Empires rise and fall for the same reason a person or living beings in general be born, grow to maturity, stop growing, and decline. And that reason is everything exists in a circle called the circle of time or the circle of space, matter, and time. And when a person, place, or thing reaches the top of its circle of space, matter, and time, it can grow no more or go no higher. Therefore, downward is the only direction it can go by the laws of nature, and the laws of nature are the supreme ruler made effective and binding by the power of ether, which is 9 ether sun, empowers the top half, of the circle, and 6 ether sun empowers the bottom half. The top half is the time of life in the universe, and the bottom half is the time of death in the same. Now, guys, I always refer you guys to the SMAT circle, just for those who can see. As you can see, the top half is NoopooH, which represent the realm of the living, and the bottom half is ZuPooH, which represent the realm of the dead. Now, in the realm of NoopooH, right, there's no such thing as death. It's important to know that. Death doesn't come in on the scene, or the death forces, they don't come in until the cycle changes to 6 west, to 6 ether. And that is the beginning of Leviathan and the beginning of the ZuPooH realm. And right now, as we stand, we're on the bottom, rock bottom, which is at 3 ether, or the ghost realm. That's where we are now in this time zone. So let's keep going. Paragraph 21. We will clarify this point right here. By showing life in the upper half of the circle and showing death in the lower half do not mean life is in the upper half of the universe and death is in the lower half. The circle simply demonstrates that life is of a higher quality and higher standard than death and exists at a different time than death. In other words, life and death of a universe exist in the same place, but at different times. A universe cannot be dead and alive in the same place at the same time. Where life was, where life was before death is now, and where death is now, life will be in time as matter changes. Right? So I always explain to you guys, when you look at the smack circle, as it's a 3 ether cycle, eventually changes into 4 ether, 5 ether, 6 ether, all the way up to 9, as the sons of the universe gets more potent and more powerful. And once they reach their epitome, which is 9 ether, then it declines and it drops down to 8 and 7 and gets back down to 6. And these are perpetual cycles. Now, a complete rotation of this cycle in the universe takes 72 million years. There's 4 major cycles in the universe, and it takes 72 million years for a complete rotation. Let me see if I can find a demonstration of that. Okay, so now you have 4 major cycles. You have the revolutionary cycle, which is this quarter right here, and then you have the origination cycle, which lasts 18 million years. You have the de-origination cycle, which lasts 18 million years. And then you have the evolutionary cycle, and that lasts 18 million years, okay? And one complete rotation takes 72 million years. That's important for you guys to know. So let's get back. Okay. All right, I see some questions. First of all, hold on. Let's see. Nanya L, he says, I got the scroll Patarak 30 spirits. Question I have is, how do you bind the spirits and free them? It explains that's what one is to do. And then you'll hear only the one true voice. That's when you open up your third eye. When you open up your third eye and you become one with your oversoul, then you'll be able to actually make contact with your ancestors, and we have ancestors who are trapped in the underworld, and you're able to actually free them from the underworld. A lot of our family members are stuck in the underworld, and you have the ability to free them. Once you resurrect, aka open up your third eye, you'll be able to do that. Okay, so I hope that helps. Let's see. Zamal, me and my family had my grandmother ashes. That's good. Spirituality. Yeah, that is good, Zamal, that you guys have that. And Allison, question. I am not an organ donor. Just to be clear, we should never be organ donors, correct? Also, I refuse any blood transfusions. Is that correct? That's absolutely correct, Miss Allison. We do not donate none of our body parts to anybody. Okay, so that's very important for you guys to know that. Okay, so let's keep going. Now we're at paragraph 22. Let's see. Now we can answer this question with great clarity, and the question is, what is going to happen to the American empire called the United States of America and Caucasian rule in general? Answer is simply in the circle of space, matter, and time, which no person, place, or thing escapes. There is no exception to the circle rule. Everything must go through the process of birth, growth, maturity, non-growth, decline, and death. Life and death themselves are no exception to the circle rule. Like all other empires before it, the American empire, known as the United States of America, will decline and fall. In fact, it is in its decline now. And guys, that's why I played that clip in the beginning of our discussion. Because the guy Chris Hedges, the journalist, was explaining how America is falling. Okay, and it's definitely falling, guys. So let's keep going. Paragraph 23. Moreover, by the same circle rule, and now I'm going to start using, instead of saying Caucasian, we're going to say Mukasu. Okay, and so instead of saying Caucasian, I'm going to say Mukasu. That is their correct name we use as Sabians. So just so you know that. I'm going to use the term mukasu for now on. Now, moreover, by the same circle rule, mukasu reign of power, like the reign of power of other races in the past, will decline and fall. It is declining now. Yet the mukasu, and now race means salau. So I'm going to say mukasu salau. So you know who I'm talking about. Yet the mukasu salau is trying hard to be the exception to the rule. But by the laws of nature, there can be no exception. So what does all this mean to us Ethiopians, and how can we benefit from it? It means liberation from adverse forces, and we can benefit from it by doing for ourselves what we can and what we should. In other words, we must learn and understand what is happening and take full advantage of it as a race. To put it another way, we must learn what to do for ourselves and do it, for space, matter, and time are turning in our favor. Paragraph 24. The mukasu knows that when an empire falls by the laws of nature, it cannot rise in the same place again until the completion of a circle, which may last 10,000 years or longer. So the mukasu is trying hard to locate and prepare a new place for the beginning of a new empire in South America, in Asia, in Africa, or anywhere he can find it, where there has been no great empire base within the past 10,000 years. However, what the mukasu hopes to disregard successfully is that by the same laws of nature, which end the power of an empire, also end the power of the rule or reign of a race. Whereas mukasu ruling power has been changing hands from white hand to white hand all over the earth for the last several thousand years. The time has come for power to change hands from the mukasu hands to the Nagato or black hand. That is what the fall of the American empire means to us Ethiopians. Then we will be able to help our relatives in Africa restore Africa to its greatness. Paragraph 25. Nine Ether is now restoring the mental power of us Ethiopians, that we will be prepared to take advantage of all opportunities favorable to our survival and well-being. We must qualify to rule even ourselves after such long mental illness called ignorance. And these booklets, the 9-ball, and also Bible interpretations and explanations, are designed to help us Ethiopians qualify. Ruling power is based on knowledge, and in the case of us Ethiopians, it's non-knowledge. We must prepare to become masters of our own destiny. The opportunity is being handed to us in our own image and in the likeness of non-knowledge, our own universal science. As the American empire called the United States of America falls, all mukasu rule over the planet will crumble with it. Places like South Africa, Mozambique, Rhodesia is now in Zimbabwe, guys, etc., enslaved and exploited by the mukasu, only exists because of the stronghold of the dragon Leviathan called the United States of America is still in world rule and supports them. But when the stronghold of the dragon falls, these subsidiaries of the stronghold will fall with it by the help of the oppressed and enslaved people, and this means liberation. Okay, guys? So that's important. Peace, Tarbuna. Peace. Now, we're at section C, which is the origins of the universes. The origins of the universes. Very important. Paragraph 26. There is no great mystery that lies behind the existence of a universe, as religionists would have us believe. A universe is as simple and natural as a tree. There is no great mysterious being who created the universe and went off someplace never to be seen again. We have never been taught that just as all living beings have a nature of their own passed on to them by absolute nature itself has a nature which is called the nature of nature. The nature of nature is the energies of nature doing what comes natural. When one understands the nature of nature, the ignorance known as mystery is destroyed. The nature of nature is the motivator and activator in existence. The nature of nature causes the activities of the one supreme being, which is absolute nature, which is all space, all matter, and all time. Paragraph 27. The slave master has never taught his captives anything about the nature of nature because it would destroy the master's deception called religion. And once the falsity known as a religion is destroyed from the captive's mind, the oppressor knows that the slave would be from under his spell of dominance and damnation. It is the nature of nature to exist by opposites, positive and negative, male and female, life and death, summer and winter, order and disorder, etc. Parts of nature exist as universes, while other parts exist as chaos. Then the parts that exist as universes exist as chaos, while the parts that exist as chaos exist as universes. In other words, order and disorder exist at the same time in nature, but not in the same places. Then order and disorder alternate back and forth by exchanging places via growth and decay. And guys, we have updated this, right? Because the master teacher had put out a new book, which is the Actual Facts number 36. Actual Facts number 36, Existence, How, and Why. And in this particular Actual Facts, he basically says the same thing. So when a universe is in a chaos cycle, you have another universe that's in let's say in a NoopooH cycle, right? So let's say you have a universe in a NoopooH cycle, and then you have a parallel universe that would be in a ZooPooH cycle and vice versa. Or you have a universe that's in a NoopooH cycle and you have another universe that's in what they call primordial chaos, okay? And so like, we have a diagram to kind of show you. This is the cycle of primordial chaos versus the cycle of order. Okay, so you have universes that are in a chaotic state, and then you have universes that are in an order state, right? And it exchanges back and forth. This is one of the reasons why I've tried to explain to others that nine ether always exists. Okay, it's very important to know that. Extremely important because 9 ether is what allows us to pull up the SMAT circle, guys. No. Okay. I see a question from Akeem. What's your opinion on vaccine and mark of the beast and transhuman? Okay, I'll deal with that once I'm done. Okay. No problem. Let me keep going, though. Paragraph 28. When the summer cycle comes to the chaotic parts, which is primordial chaos in nature, universes sprout and grow like trees throughout existence that has been in disorder. When the winter cycle of existence comes to orderly parts, which is the universes of nature, the universes crumble and return to primordial chaos, while others in other places are beginning to grow. A universe is not something mechanically made. It is a growth in nature as natural as a plant. It is the nature of nature that starts a universe to grow, and the nature of nature starts a universe to crumble. Nature exists in cycles, circles and cycles of limited duration. And I told you that limited duration takes the universe, 72 million years to do one cycle, and it goes through 80 of those circle cycles, okay? So that's like 5.7 million years. Now, if you guys get the books, the nature books, and you guys can get those on Scribes, it goes into those details about how the universe is developed. And for those who want it, I can get you guys access to it. But let me keep going. That's because the nature books they're an add-on into further explaining the details about the nature, how it actually works. But let me keep going. Let's see. Now, nature exists in circles and cycles of limited duration. It takes a universe 9 years to be born. To put it another way, the time it takes for 9 ether to fully form a universe is 9 years. And this time is a universe gestation period. Now, once the universe is born, which is that 9-year period, it takes 18 million years to go through its complete gestation period. Okay, so that's also important to know that. Now, let's keep going. Paragraph 29. When a universe sprouts and grows, it is because the sum of existence returns to that part of nature. Origin of a universe takes place this way. Imagine very thick fog-like conditions existing in very vast areas of space as a thorough mixture of gases, very fine soil, chemicals, and all other types of elements. This is primordial chaos. When the summer season returns to this area, like a seed planet, but waiting for spring to arrive, the gases and chemicals and all active elements which had been floating aimlessly in space begin to accumulate in a central point. These active elements float aimlessly because there is no gravitation at that time, and there is no universal body anywhere near to attract or pull them, right? Paragraph 30. The many active elements, gases and chemicals, etc., of nature, by the nature of nature, continue to aggregate to a central point. And when some of the very active elements existing in nature has focused in the same place, a universe or seed is formed, and then a spontaneous fire begins in the egg or seed. And that egg is the beginning of one of many suns, which are the original creator in the form of universal bodies. Okay, so now this is the birth of what we call an alpha star. So in the center of every universe, there's a super massive mega sun in the center of every universe, guys. Let's keep going. The African pygmy is the original creator in flesh and blood, and we bigger Ethiopians are the evolutionary descendants of those African pygmies. The forming of the universal eggs is the combination of all existing gases and chemicals, and this is 9 ether, the original grower and conscious gases. Paragraph 31. When the sun starts to grow, it sends out electrical waves in the form of ethereal lightning, and at the end of each lightning wave, another 9 ether egg forms, which is the beginning of another sun. When the suns have grown big enough and strong enough, they put the rest of the universe in order by growing planets, satellites, etc. Now, the suns grow by attracting more and more matter and changing the atomic count of that matter through the process of metamorphosis. The suns are plants with brain and blood, and other universe bodies are planets, which means smaller plants. Okay? So the sun, guys, the suns are living entities. The suns and the planets are living, thinking, intelligent entities. Unlike the Mukasu tries to explain, he doesn't teach you that, but he knows it's true. But let's keep going. Oh, we have the ability to communicate with the sun, guys. This is what we mean by tapping into 9 ether. Okay, when you tap into 9 ether, this is why the master teacher said, if you go to booklet 1 of the 9 ball, booklet 1, the very last paragraph, why I always quote this very last sentence: 9 ether develops 9 mind. 9 ether develops 9 reason. 9 reason develops 9 knowledge, and 9 knowledge develops 9 mind power, which is the prerequisite to the Ethiopian mental and physical liberation. Now, you guys have to learn to harness 9 ether energies, right? Which is what the suns are emitting now. This is the point of the spiritual practices, why we do the prayers, the chants, the meditation, all of those techniques to teach you how to harness 9 ether energy, and that'll increase your intelligence and increase your electrical flow in the brain, which would increase your ability to reason. Trust me, it works. Let's keep going. Okay. So we have paragraph 32. All true stars of the universe are the suns, do not have a solar system. Some suns are just stabilizers and light and life givers in the universe. But those like our sun in this part of the universe are growers and centers of solar systems. When a sun that is going to have a solar system has grown big enough and strong enough, it begins to put the matter in chaos surrounding it into order by forming a magnetic core, which is the center of a planet, and rolling that magnetic core against the matter of primordial chaos, which is not yet in order and surrounding the sun. A planet grows until all the matter in its immediate area has been formed into the orb. Then the power of the sun ignites the planet and releases its attraction on the planet, and the weight of the planet moves the orb away from the sun. The planet moves farther and farther away from the sun until it displaces its own weight in the atmosphere of the sun as an object does in water. An object will sink in water until it displaces its own weight in that water. Then it stops and floats. Paragraph 33. When the planet displaces its own weight in the atmosphere as an object does in water, it is in orbit and then it floats around the sun. It grows its grower and controller indefinitely. When the sun is growing the planets, it uses all matter available. And of course, that includes all gases, chemicals, and elements in sight. But the compound called water is separated from the other elements because the compound known as water lessens the burnability of the other elements by weakening their potency. Moreover, water is necessary in the forming of satellites and is needed in the forming of flesh and blood beings. Paragraph 34. When the planet orbits the sun and starts its eternal rotation around the nine ball, the planet is a burning ball, and that ball burns and burns until the burning goes beneath the surface of the planet as a fire does in a burning coal. When the burning goes beneath the surface and the planet cools from its burning, the sun pushes the Earth's sheer water into the orb's magnetic and gravitational field. And it begins to rain and rain and rain. As this water goes beneath the surface of the planet and reaches the gases and chemicals in the Earth, which are still burning, pressure begins to build up, and eventually the results are a series of tremendous violent explosions which send parts of the Earth into orbit around the planet. Then the sun, by the laws of nature, draws these parts together and grows these parts together by rain, water, and heat. Paragraph 35. However, those parts of Earth that did not have enough force behind them to go into space and become part of the moon fell back to Earth and formed mountains and other high places. Yet, all mountains were not formed this way. Some mountains are the results of heat pressure pushing parts of the Earth upward, but never becoming powerful enough for violent explosions. Of course, after those series of tremendous explosions, great craters and cracks were left in the Earth. And it is easy to see how they would become oceans and rivers and lakes and streams, since the rains kept falling until those craters and crevices were filled enough with water. Paragraph 36. Now the stage was set and ready for other life. All ingredients needed for various types of life was given Mother Earth while she was growing in primordial chaos. And when the Earth caught fire and was going through a heat process, the rains came and eggs were formed in the waters of the Earth by the nature of nature through action of alpha bombardment, etc., which combined the formula necessary for life. Vegetation came up, for it was necessary for food and protection for the flesh and blood beings that followed. Next was the dwarf beings, now called the African pygmies. These dwarf newborns were born from the source of the Nile River, meaning the Nile River in Africa. So, guys, like I said, this whole gestation period of the solar system developing and forming All of that process took approximately 18 million years, the first quarter. And then at 6, when you got to 6 East, and let's show you here on the SMAT circle, when we get to 6 East, so from 3, let's say this is the beginning of a universe, right? And it starts at 3 South, and from 3 South to 6 East, that takes 18 million years, and that's the gestation period. And then we get to 6 East, this is the beginning of flesh and blood beings, what you call the pygmy gods and goddesses. They incarnate onto the planet at that time. Again, I'm talking about something that happened billions of years ago, okay? So that's very important to keep in mind the timeline we're referring to, okay? Because anyone who's studying our doctrine, the master gives different origins for the pygmy gods and goddesses, and different, especially if you read the book, the actual facts, existence, what's that one? Intelligent design, divine design, and plot of aliens. The master teacher kind of goes into that. So I just want to make that clear. So let's keep going. Paragraph 37. Now, the original atmosphere of this planet was very unlike we know it today. At that time, the atmosphere was strong, dense with life gases, and hot all over the planet, even at the poles. The orb Earth was the first mother of all living beings on this planet, and the sun was the first father of all in the form of life, 9 ether, or the form of death, 6 ether. Since there was no flesh and blood mothers to nurse the first flesh and blood beings on the planet, this means they had to be born strong enough to take care of themselves. There was neither poisonous vegetation nor animals and fowl of prey. Therefore, our ancestors, the pygmies, had no danger to confront them, and anything they could eat or drink was suitable for food. Now, the dwarf Ethiopians could not die because everything was living. The earth was living, the atmosphere was living, and the water was living. The enemy called death was not there. So like I said, in the realm of NoopooH, there is no death, okay? So our ancestors who lived in that realm, and let's go back over there. Let's see. Those who lived in the realm of NoopooH, and that was a period, when you go from 6 East to 6 West, that's a period of 36 million years, guys. So these beings didn't experience any kind of death in those cycles, okay? Until 6 West came, and that was the beginning of the death cycles. But let's keep going. Paragraph 38. At the time of original creation, that is, original order, the atmosphere was electrified with 9 ether and was strong and mentally nourishing. Now the atmosphere is dead and poisonous throughout the planet, and water and earth likewise. Now, poisonous vegetation and insects, animals, and birds of prey were not born until 36 million years after original order, when evolution, the death of the universe, became a reality. The egg formula necessary for death were in the earth, but by the laws of nature, which is the nature of nature, they had to remain inactive until the winter season of existence. Summer of existence is life, and winter of existence, of course, is death. The death seed came up in the form of poisonous insects, poisonous animals, poisonous vegetation, animals of prey, birds of prey, insects of prey, vegetation of prey, and conscious gases of prey arrived in the form of 6 ether, Leviathan, or the zodiac. Paragraph 39. All universes go through similar processes, and all suns, planets, satellites, etc. go through the same process of birth, growth, maturity, decline, and death in one form or another. When the sun died and started giving off 6 ether permanents, which caused interference with the earth and moon in their courses, the moon stopped turning on its own axis and became waterless, and thereby a dead universal body. Interference with the earth and moon in their courses caused vast floods over the earth, including colossal tidal waves, and much of the earth's surface, which was above water, disappeared under pressure of floods. Paragraph 40. The advent of sixth ether was like nuclear fallout, and it pervaded the atmosphere, waters, and vegetation which flesh and blood beings had to breathe, drink, and eat. And by these means, the secondary created, which is Leviathan, the zodiac, or sixth ether, was able to modify and alter original creation, that is, original growth. The moon mist, which is an appellation for sixth ether, caused things to grow bigger in size and lighter in complexion. Sixth ether, of course, is the forces of death, the negative forces of nature. Existing ghost gases are the perfection of the negative forces of nature. Paragraph 41. During the cycle of the living, the positive forces of nature, the living nine ether gases will proclaim that they created the universe. And during the cycle of the dead, the six ether gases and ghosts, the dead, will proclaim that they created the universe. But how we can determine without a doubt who really did it is by asking ourselves this question: who had to be first, the living or the dead? Of course, the answer is the living, because there must be life before there can be death. Therefore, the universes had to be created, grown by the living and not the dead. The creation by the dead is the changes in original creation, which is evolution, or which evolution caused. Including this topic, it is correct to state that the origin of the universes is nine ether, the combination of all existing chemicals and gases, the universal mind, the universal grower. Now, we have section D, the laws of the opposites. Paragraph 42. The opposites are the positive factors of nature and the negative factors of nature. The opposites are the positive forces of nature versus the negative forces of nature. The true opposites among the races are the Ethiopian race and the Mukasu Salau. The opposite forces of nature are the living and the dead. The living are those forces of nature which constantly resolve to preserve and magnify life. And the dead are those forces of nature which resolve to destroy and magnify life while preserving and magnifying death. Therefore, since the Ethiopian and the Mukasu Salau are opposites by nature, one must represent life and the other death by nature. Thereby, it stands to sound reason that since the Ethiopian race was first on the planet, it would represent life, for there must be life before there can be death. Paragraph 43. But life and death exist and have their cycles by laws of nature. The Ethiopian race can never be liberated without knowing, accepting, and practicing the laws of the opposites. The 9 Nubian guides are based on the laws of the opposites. One-time slaveholder Abraham Lincoln, who became president of the United States, knew lots about the laws of the opposite and made national policy statements based on his knowledge of these laws, and his statements follow. On June 26, 1857, in Springfield, Illinois, Abraham Lincoln, quote, "There is a natural disgust in the minds of nearly all white people at the idea of an indiscriminate amalgamation of the white and black races. A separation of the races is the only perfect preventive of amalgamation, but as immediate separation is impossible, the next best thing is to keep them apart where they are not already together." So, guys, Abraham Lincoln promoted separation, right? We should know that by now, but let's keep going. Now, another speech he gave on September the 18th, 1858 in Charleston, Illinois. He says, "I will say then that I am not nor ever have been in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I will say in addition to this that there is a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality." Right? And that's true. To this very day, we're not socially equal to the Caucasian, and we're not politically equal to them. because they have all the social power and they got all the political power. But let's keep going. And inasmuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. And I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. And they have that to this very day, guys. Let's go. Another speech he gave, August the 21st, 1859 in Ottawa, Illinois. Quote, I hold that a Negro is not and never ought to be a citizen of the United States. You hear that? I hold that this government was made on the white basis by white men for the benefit of white men and their posterity forever, and should be administered by white men and none other. And last, August 14th, 1862, to Negroes at Washington. Now, this is Abraham Lincoln talking to black people. He says this, even when you cease to be slaves, he says, you are yet far removed from being placed on an equality with white people on this broad continent. Not a single man of your race is made the equal of a single man of ours. Go where you are treated the best, and the ban is still upon you. I cannot alter it if I would. So basically, Abraham Lincoln was telling black people, you're wasting your time living with us. But let's keep going. We didn't learn, guys. It's crazy. Paragraph 44. The statements of Lincoln verified that the United States government was created by Mukasu, that is whites, for the benefit of Mukasu and none other. And secondly, Lincoln's statements showed that he knew enough about the nature of his race and the laws of the opposites to understand that the Ethiopian and the Mukasu Salau would never be equal in the same place at the same time. Therefore, it is vitally important that we disclose the elements of the laws of the opposites at this time. One of the times in which they are most needed, which is the time of captivity for us. Now, we should know that according to the laws of the opposites, 1, if the dead are to live and rule, they must do so on the ignorance, life, blood, suffering, strength, and death of the living. 2, pain and pleasure must offset each other. 3, those who represent the living and those who represent the dead cannot be equal in the same place at the same time. 4, power of the living and dead combined can be but 100%. 5, the light and activities, which is the knowledge and order of existence, depend on the positive and negative forces of nature. 6, what seems to be best for an individual of a race may not be best for that individual's race. And 7, knowledge always rules ignorance. Now, paragraph 45. Let's examine number 1 in the foregoing paragraph and see what it means to us Ethiopians as individuals and as a race, and what it means to our efforts of liberation. The Caucasian race is the perfection of death and is the living dead in the flesh. Therefore, in order for it to exist and rule, it must have victims to use as scapegoats, a Jesus. The Jesus doctrine, the cross doctrine, is the doctrine of the dead, because after death, no one sees, feels, tastes, hears, smells, or thinks. One must have eyes to see, nerves to feel, a tongue and palate to taste, ears to hear, nostrils to smell, and a brain to think. And only the physical person can provide these things, because all these parts die with physical death of one's body. Furthermore, how can the dead offer us life after death when they have no life of their own? Ghost, which is God, has no blood, which is why it must find blood elsewhere in order to survive. Now, the Mukasu Salau is the posterity of ghosts. Paragraph 46. The Jesus doctrine, that is the doctrine of the dead, is vampirism. And as long as the dead can get us Ethiopians who represent life by nature to believe in vampirism, which is the doctrine of the dead, the future well-being and rule by the dead are assured. And this means no possible liberation for us victims of captivity. Moreover, As long as we believe and follow the dead, we Ethiopians will remain mentally dead, hardly able to think our way out of an open door. And this makes the thought of liberation and freedom a cruel hoax. The dead lives on the suffering, blood, and death of the living by destroying the living minds of the living with ignorance. And ignorance renders the living almost helpless. Then Dracula can live and prey on its victims, the ignorant. The dead must sap the lives of the living because they have no life of their own. But when we quit supporting the dead by refusing to believe in their deceptions and our nine knowledge continues to grow, the dead will become sealed in the earth again, for their reign of terror will be terminated because they will not have our ignorance to survive on. Keep going. Then we Ethiopians can have liberation and freedom again. Remember, the symbol of the dead is the cross, and the dead must prey on the living in order to survive. All struggles and wars of blood and suffering are the results of the will and power of the dead, six ether and ghosts, the negative forces of nature, because pain is their pleasure and blood is their survival. Paragraph 47. The second law mentioned is that pleasure must be offset by pain and vice versa. We scientists made it clear that the law we mentioned first is fact and binding by nature because the dead has no life of their own, thereby must rob the living of theirs if they are to live and rule. In this second law we mentioned, we wish to make it clear this law is fact and binding by nature because orderly existence must have balance. And when there is all pleasure and no pain, or all pain and no pleasure, all balance is destroyed and orderly existence ceases to exist. Meaning, there is complete one-sidedness or chaos. What this means to our Ethiopian liberation is thus: the more pleasure we have, the more pain we must suffer, thereby making our liberation that much more difficult, because pain must offset pleasure by the laws of the opposites. Paragraph 48. One reason Caucasians do not wish to separate from Negroes is they wish to use Negroes as their scapegoats. When the Mukasu's pleasure increases to the point where it must be offset by pain and suffering, the dead urges one or more Mukasu to go looking for some Negroes to brutalize and kill. The Negro, in his or her ignorance, is the Mukasu's Jesus, meaning his scapegoat and prey. And there is nothing effective we Ethiopians can do about it at this time but find, study, accept, and practice nine knowledge that we may regain our mental power necessary to liberate ourselves by whatever means needed. From mental power comes all other powers. We Ethiopians cannot stop Mukasu, which is Dracula, from preying on us by we Ethiopians can stop Mukasu, which is Dracula, from preying on us by refusing to accept their false teachings and start practicing our own way of life. Paragraph 49. As the third law mentioned stated, opposites cannot be equal in the same place at the same time because opposites are opposition by nature, and Mukasu are oppressive by nature because they are empowered by graveyard forces. Therefore, they must suppress, oppress, and repress as a natural course of action. The Mukasu nature makes it impossible to live with him on an equal basis. If we do not have the power to oppress him, he will surely oppress us because therefore, the best thing for us is racial separation, not racial integration, which is racial suicide and genocide. Since by law of nature opposites cannot be equal in the same place at the same time, we know that the so-called civil rights and equal rights by Negro organizations in the United States of America are another cruel hoax perpetuated upon Ethiopian people. Hence, the answer is not civil and equal rights, and Abraham Lincoln made this very clear, but the answer is natural rights as outlined in Liberation Information. Opposites cannot be equal in the same place at the same time because opposites are the reverse of each other by nature. Paragraph 50. The fourth law mentioned relates to us that the powers of the opposites combined can only be 100%. And this means as the power of one increases, the power of another must decrease. And the science of it to us Ethiopians is this. As our Ethiopian mentality increased with nine knowledge, the Mukasu mentality will decrease because nine knowledge is too much light for the Mukasu to stand. Thereby, their mentality fades away like a disappearing fog that gets thinner and thinner, plus the fact that mental power can be only 100%. By the same laws, physical powers of the opposites are but 100%. And as one increases, the other decreases in proportion. Nine knowledge will increase our Ethiopian mentality and in turn our physical powers. Do not look for miracles to happen, but time and cycle and our efforts will turn the tables and then the fog. Now, let me kind of clarify what the master teacher is trying to say. Meaning this, when you look at the SMAT circle, as we increase in nine knowledge, as it goes up, it moves away from the lower cycles, the three ether, right? So as you increase in intelligence, those who represent a lower mind, they will have less abilities and less powers to affect you. So as you increase, they naturally decrease. Same thing happens in reverse in a certain cycle, meaning as you decrease in knowledge, they increase in knowledge. So that's basically what the master teacher is trying to explain, that as we increase in our intelligence, that means our actions will follow and we'll be able to do more powerful things, and the Mukasu will not be able to compete with us. And they will gradually lose power as we increase power. That's what he means. Huh? Yes. I gotta keep going. Okay. Now with paragraph 51, we're almost done, guys. Now the law mentioned in the fifth place brings out the fact that the opposite in some form or other are interdependent on each other. When the Mukasu Salau fades off the scene, the rest of mankind is left as the opposite of the Ethiopian race. When mankind in general revolves off the scene, the Ethiopian race has developed its own opposites in the persons of certain pygmies that represent the negative factors of nature. To say the light and activities, the knowledge and order of existence depend on the positive and negative forces of nature is to include reproduction of self by the opposites called the male and female. However, the science of this law is to set forth that it is nonsense to think that one opposite is going to completely destroy the other, in the sense that religionists think one day God is going to destroy the devil or all evil. It is nonsense because opposites are based on each other by nature, and from them combined come all knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, just as all light in a room comes from a bulb or bulbs that cannot burn without positive and negative factors of nature. So, guys, just like the Mukasu cannot destroy us, we cannot destroy them. Nature forbids it. Let's keep going. Paragraph 52. A bulb cannot burn on positive alone or negative alone. It must have some of both. The same way it is with orderly existence. The ratio of positive to negative at the bottom of the circle where we are now is 2 to 7. 2 parts positive and 7 parts negative. But the top of the circle, the ratio is reversed. 7 parts positive and 2 parts negative. Of course, we are now at the bottom of the circle, the animal world. The world of the day, 2 parts positive and 7 parts negative. The law in fifth position teaches us to quit looking for something from somewhere all good to come and do for us what we must do for ourselves. Paragraph 52. The negatives in the Ethiopian race with the 2 parts positive and 7 parts ratio cannot see the importance of maintaining the law mentioned in number 6 position. They do not see the significance of working back towards our 7 parts positive and 2 parts ratio, a 2 parts negative ratio, the acme of Ethiopian culture. What seems to be best for an individual in our race may not be best for the race, but what is best for the race is always best for the individual. If the bootlickers for the Mukasu and Al Salal could understand this law of self-preservation, we would not have traitors in our race called Uncle Toms. Uncle Toms and Aunt Thomases are people who found an opening and support for what they by nature wanted to do all the time, working with the opposition or opposite against one's own preservation is punishable by death according to the laws of the opposites. When one puts his selfishness and self-interest before the survival and well-being of his race, he or she is a traitor and deserves what the laws of nature demand for such crime. Working for the opposition or opposite against your own race is below the animal state, and that person deserves to be treated so. Now, we have updated that, guys. We don't advocate that. One, we don't advocate death. We don't advocate the death penalty. That's just not cool. So I'll leave it at that until we do have a body of laws, the canon of the Sabian canon of laws and rules and regulations, and hopefully we'll get a chance to go over those things. But keep in mind, this stuff was put out 50 years ago. Okay, let's keep going. Paragraph 54. One reason for these deliberations by us Ethiopian scientists is to open your eyes that you may see further than we have shown. In other words, you should be able by now, if you have read all the booklets, the 9 ball and Bible interpretations and explanations. And guys, the next series we're going to go over is the Bible interpretations and explanations, just so you know. Although next week we're going to do question and answer classes on the 9 ball series. So I do ask you guys to take your time, write down questions and concerns, what we went over in the 9 ball series, the last 4 lectures, so that we can go over that in detail through a question and answer class next week. Okay. So I want to make that clear, but let me keep going. Now, to gather correct and effective information on your own directly from nature. So what he's saying, what the master teacher is trying to say here is, as you develop your 9 mind, you'll be able to develop high levels of reasonability and be able to understand natural nature principles and be able to educate people on these natural nature principles, basically. Okay, you'll have a clearer comprehension of nature itself as your intelligence increases, right, with 9 reasoning. But let's keep going. Now, we need as much correct information as we can obtain, because knowledge always rules ignorance is one main reason why the Mukasu is ruling the Ethiopian almost everywhere. This knowledge and ignorance law is mentioned in the 7th position. Knowledge and ignorance are opposites, and when the captive obtain as much universal knowledge as the captor and practice that knowledge normally and naturally, the slave will become par with the slave master. Then the master will desire the slave to be elsewhere, because the slave then becomes a real challenge to the master's ruling power. Paragraph 55. All laws and codes of nature are interwoven together and thereby form one big network called the nature of nature, the motivator and activator in the one supreme being. The one supreme being, of course, is nature in general, absolute nature, all space, all matter, and all time, and their products. There is no escape from slavery and captivity and oppression by the dead, except by the knowledge and practice of the laws and codes of nature that are in favor of the Ethiopian race. These booklets are the outline to the knowledge we Ethiopians need for our mental liberation, which is prerequisite to physical liberation. Section E, information for all darker peoples. Paragraph 56. Although other darker races do not are not the same as the Ethiopian race, the darker mankind is closer in nature to the Ethiopians than the Mukasu Salau. This fact is very important because it means other darker people's way of life by nature is closer and more relevant, and also means as the Mukasu Salau fades off the world stage, a more congenial opposition or opposite will take its place. Mankind in general is opposite to the Ethiopian race, but not the extreme opposite like the Mukasu Salau. And that means less friction and suffering for the Ethiopian race and other darker races as time proceeds. Paragraph 57. However, what we Ethiopian scientists really wish other darker races to know follows. The aim of the Mukasu Salau is to subjugate all other races and reduce us all to a position of experiments and servants permanently, so that the Mukasu Salau can practice its mayhem and vampirism anywhere in the world on any people at any time it feels that it needs a scapegoat for well-being and survival. We also wish other darker races to know that they must get their liberation from vampirism and oppression by the Mukasu in a similar manner that we Ethiopians must execute ours, starting with a change in mind, a revolution of the mind in a similar manner as outlined in these booklets, the 9 Ball and Bible interpretations and explanations. But of course, each darker race must apply this information in accordance with its own nature. Paragraph 58. Moreover, the purpose of the resurrected Ethiopian by nature is to oppress no one or no other race. But our natural goal is to liberate ourselves and keep our race liberated and help other darker races by correct information that they may be able to do the same. We maintain and advocate that every race should have its own territory where it can practice its own way of life, mind its own business, and be master of its own destiny. And a race should do whatever it is necessary to obtain this goal, which is its rights by nature. But the Mukasu Salau is not such by nature that will permit this as long as it stays in spiritual, economic, and military powers. So the only hope that we darker races will ever have to be masters of our own destinies is to help nature remove the Mukasu from power by practicing the first law of nature, which is self-preservation. And self-preservation has many angles and takes many forms. Paragraph 59. Darker races, the way to peace, security, and well-being is not the Mukasu's automation, handouts called economic aid, advanced technology, Earth and moon satellites, etc. To put it another way, it is futile trying to play catch-up with the Mukasu in economics, luxuries, technology, space explorations, and so forth, because they are too far ahead and most of it is not necessary for survival and well-being anyway. So-called underdeveloped darker nations should develop their own ways and means of making and producing whatever they need for survival and well-being and progress. Their own ways and means is much shorter and surer way to peace and security than trying to use the Mukasu for your development, because if the Mukasu helps you, there are strings attached that assures the Mukasu that you will never be master of your own destiny through his economic and military aid. Paragraph 60. Unfortunately, not only among Negroes in the United States, but all over the world, Mukasu have a system of Uncle Tomism. This worldwide system of bootlicking for the Mukasu is performed by individual persons and individual nations. Individual races and nations cater to the Mukasu whims and wills for mere economic or military handouts that keep them in pawn to the Mukasu's interests. Furthermore, accepting handouts is simply begging and bumming your way through, which is another form of selling yourself out. The Mukasu Salau has a whole world of darker peoples and nations on its welfare rolls. And the sooner darker peoples and darker nations wake up and understand that the only road to true independence and real progress is self-creativeness, the better off we all will be. Darker mankind must awaken and realize, although it is not as heavily oppressed and suppressed and repressed as the Ethiopian race, it still has a long way to go to be master of his own destiny. Paragraph 61. And by using the same prescription as described in these booklets for Ethiopians, other darker races can liberate themselves and be free. Of course, each race's application of nature's laws and way will be in each race's own nature, as it is most effective this way. In other words, the solution to world problems for Ethiopians is a solution for other races, also against the number one common enemy called the Mukasu Salau. Now, the Mukasu Salau killed off most darker peoples of Europe approximately 6,000 years ago and stole that continent. And less than 500 years ago, killed off the Ethiopians and Indians in North America and stole this continent. And it has no intentions of stopping until it kills off most darker peoples of the earth and steal all the lands of the planet and establish a permanent world slave state, meaning the whole Mukasu Salau is Hitler. And guys, y'all need to watch this show. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called The Man, I think The Man of White Castle, The Man Behind White Castle. It's a show that shows if the Nazis had won, if the Nazis had won World War II, what they'd have done to the world. And in that show, they make it very clear if the Nazis had won, they said, and they re-enslaved all of Africa, and they exterminated all of us blacks that lived in America. They basically exterminated us, and that's what that show explains. So it's interesting if y'all watch it. Paragraph 62. Only way we darker peoples can prevent this from happening is, 1, understand that the Mukasu is Dracula and remove the darkness, which is ignorance, in which Dracula must have to prey on his victims. 2, remove the bootlickers and crooks from power who Mukasu handpicked to head black organizations and run puppet and parrot governments. 3, reject and outlaw in darker nations the doctrine of the dead called Christianity and Judaism, which is simply vampirism and a personification of the Mukasu race. And 4, let Mukasus know as little as possible about your plans and what you are doing, because they are merely spies and disruptors of darker people's way of life. 5, revamp your educational system to follow your own nature only. 6, reject all Mukasu handouts and help, because they make only beggars, dependents, and bootlickers of people. And 7, whatever there is to be able to be done for survival, well-being, and true progress, do it yourself in your own ability, your own image and likeness, your own time and own nature. 8, develop your own economy and own military might with your own ability and own time. And 9, national oil and all other resources that Mukasus have any interest in be completely nationalized, and let them have only that which is more beneficial to let them have than harmful. This will cripple his world machinery of war and industry. Side note, guys, I put here, the 144,000 resurrected souls can accomplish the goals above. And this is the whole point why we always stress raising the 144,000. You must resurrect. There's no way we're going to accomplish these goals in the mental state that we're in now. You must resurrect, guys. Let's keep going. 3 more paragraphs. Paragraph 63. This is the way we darker peoples must work mentally and physically to help nature remove Mukasu from economic and military powers by our own survival and security and well-being of the future and person of our children. Many people watch various Mukasu stock markets to determine Mukasu's power, strength, and direction, but it makes no difference whether their stock markets go up or down as long as they still have the natural resources from darker nations to speculate with. They can abandon the present stock markets, create others, and keep going indefinitely. But when their resources are cut off, then the stock markets fall, it stays down, and so will all their cynical operations and plans decline, including their misused military might. Paragraph 64. The Mukasu Salau can conquer and control peoples and nations anywhere in the world, but it cannot defeat and destroy the laws, cycles, and way of nature. Therefore, these factors and forces are a way out via knowledge of them and practice of them. If all races would understand and adhere to the codes, cycles, and way of nature, we all would be in our own lands, minding our own businesses, and practicing our own way of life. Last paragraph, guys. Paragraph 65. We conclude this booklet by relating this note. When the brain has been imprisoned by ignorance for a considerable term of time, it is possessed and sealed by that ignorance. So when that ignorance is being destroyed by universal non-knowledge, you may experience unpleasant dreams because the forces of ignorance are resisting the forces of knowledge. But the powers of knowledge will win if you are intelligent. Then the Mukasu Salau will be able to conquer and control darker peoples no place on earth. And that is it, guys. That was long, but I think it was necessary and definitely needed. And like I always say, I always recommend to watch these videos, these lectures more than once. Watch these lectures and discussions more than once. Like I said, I'm going to do a question and answer class on the whole series next week, right? So I do recommend you guys to go over them, to write down questions and concerns so we can discuss the details, to discuss a lot of the concepts that we talked about. I think it's extremely important. And then after we do the question and answer series, then we're going to go into the next series, which is the Bible interpretations and explanations, right? Talking about the secrets of the Bible and the science of the Bible, the origins of the Bible, right? Because our people need to understand these things. So we're going to deal with that. Now, as far as any questions, all right, now to address some of you guys' questions, let's see. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so let's see. Akeem had a question. What your opinion on the vaccine and mark of the beast? And what's that? Transhumanism? I'm not sure what you mean by transhumanism. As far as the vaccine is concerned, we talked about this before. Again, as I keep saying, we're at a disadvantage because the Mukasu is talking about passing a mandatory law for people to get vaccinated. In fact, if you work for the federal government, it's already becoming mandatory, and if you choose not to take it, they make it very difficult, for you to work there because they require you to be tested like every other day or something like that. And so they're pushing for mandates. And we don't have no political power. We have no way of stopping him. The Mukasu can choose to do whatever he wants. And so we had a huge disadvantage. Now think about this. This information the master teacher put out 50 years ago, if we had adhered to it and listened to what the master teacher was saying 50 years ago, we wouldn't be in this predicament. But our people didn't listen. We just didn't listen. And we were so caught up in religious minds. And so he had to spend so much time trying to educate us about, the religious schools of thought so that we can eventually come out of that, which is where we are now. So, we have non-knowledge. It's about using right knowledge to our benefit. And that first step is resurrection. As I keep saying, you have to overcome the negative forces within self first, So I repeat, we really have no power over him mandating vaccines. I don't recommend them, but they have the power to restrict us to do things, so it's at each individual's choice on how they deal with that. Again, like I said, I don't recommend it, but we're kind of at a, we don't have no power to resist them. That's our sad situation. So, I wouldn't worry about the concept of the mark of the beast. I mean, everything here is the mark of the beast. Money is the mark of the beast. Credit is the mark of the beast. All his whole system, because it comes from him. It's his marks, and he represents the beast that's in Revelation chapter 12, verse 7. So it's not much we can do other than what we're doing now and what we're teaching. This is why we're teaching what we're teaching, guys. Okay, so now let's see. I appreciate it. Okay, so another question from Nanya L. What were the artifacts that were sought after by the Tamhu in Iraq? I heard they got them and they were of great importance to do with extraterrestrials. Okay, so what the master teacher had talked about before is the Mukasu. The reason why they was in Iraq is because they was trying to erase their origins. They didn't want people to know about their origins, and we're gonna get into that because the Mukasu was an experiment by his overlords, the Aldebarans and the Pleiadians. In fact, I'm gonna show you Mukasu's Germans talking about it because they taught this. The Germans taught, and they knew that they came from the Pleiadians. Okay, and so their origin stories was in the Sumerian tablets, and so they was trying to get all those artifacts because they're trying to erase that because they don't want the world to know, that they're basically a genetic experiment, and they're the albino children of the Hindus, so that story is very complex, trying to explain their origins. And we're going to kind of get into that when we get into the Bible interpretations and explanations, because the Adam and Eve story is a true story, but it's talking about them, their origins 6,000 years ago. So we're going to try to address those things. Okay. Let's see. Back. Okay, all right. So I see another question from Nolene Frank. Question on the lecture is, what's that? Psoriasis, a form of leprosy. Are all ancestors who have not gotten the right knowledge, that how do we regain our own way of life? Where do we start? Okay, I'm kind of confused. Oh, is that what he's asking? Is psoriasis a form of leprosy? Oh, I'm not sure. I haven't looked up that disease, whether or not psoriasis is a form of eczema. Psoriasis is eczema. Oh, then it is leprosy. If psoriasis is eczema, all skin diseases are forms of leprosy. Just so you know, all skin diseases are forms of leprosy. Now we're teaching, guys. We're teaching how to live Wu-Sabat, right knowledge, right? The first step, as I keep trying to tell you guys, you must resurrect. You must develop your higher self. You must do the rituals to open up your third eye and expand your consciousness. As I keep trying to tell you, as it was put in the 9 ball, part 1, paragraph 37, the very last paragraph, the very last sentence, right? 9 ether develops the 9 reason. 9 reason develops 9 knowledge, and 9 knowledge develops the 9 mind. And that's our goal, is to develop the 9 mind, because once you have the 9 mind, you will then be able to out reason the Mukasu. And we would being able to make decisions, right, to put us in positions of power and authority. Right now, we don't know how to out reason them because we haven't developed the 9 mind yet. And you haven't developed the 9 mind because you don't know how to harness 9 ether energy. And that requires the rituals that we teach. So if for those who practice the rituals, then you'll be able to develop yourself and you will see your intellect increasing. I tell you, this is why we as an organization haven't rise yet, because we have not. First of all, most individuals didn't even comprehend how to harness 9 ether. Most people still don't know. And that's why I'm trying to show you guys how to do it. And it will increase your intelligence so that we will, when the minds are united, the bodies will physically come together. We can't accomplish anything because we have divided minds. And so you have all these black organizations that physically come together, but they're still mentally separated. And as long as we are mentally separated, we're going to never accomplish anything physically. So we have to be mentally united. We have to reason at the same levels. It is our disagreements that is keeping us divided, guys. Okay, let's keep going. That's what I just said. The way we gain our own way of life is through non-knowledge. Now let's see. How do we wake up puppets who does not see themselves as puppets? There's no way to make the unintelligent intelligent. I repeat, no one can make someone intelligent. Someone has to be able, meaning the way nine ether works, it first visits the minds of its posterity. If people do not adhere to right knowledge, they can't comprehend right now. First of all, the biggest problem without people around the planet, they got to first know the difference between being black and white, because the Mukasa has been confusing the concept of race and trying to teach them there's no such thing as race. So our people don't even understand that they're part of an African race. That's the first thing they got to realize, that there's a difference between races. And I did a lecture on that, and I recommend everyone to watch it, the races of nature by nature. So to help make it clear so we can comprehend, because he's trying to educate people to make them think there's no such thing as race. So that's important, guys. Now, let's see where we at. I will get my questions ready. Got it. Okay, Nolene Frank. The 144,000 children have come this amount. How come this amount has not yet reached? And Baba has been here teaching for 50 years. The WAPO is worldwide, right? Yeah, the master. Yes, the masters constantly talked about this, right? Why haven't we reached the goal of 144,000 resurrected ones? That's what I was just saying. There's no way to resurrect unless you develop yourself spiritually. And most students of Wu-Sabat who have been students of the master teacher have not developed themselves spiritually. They've not learned how to open up their third eye and make contact with their oversoul. They just lack the discipline, and it's been very difficult. Most students don't even comprehend doing that. That's why I'm showing you this very last paragraph in the nine ball here. If you don't know how to harness nine ether energy into the body, like, let me show you this. The master teacher, I talked about this before, right? We put out a book, The Right Knowledge Scroll. Okay. Now we put out the Right Knowledge Scroll back in what was that? 1994, right? We put this book out in 1994, The Right Knowledge Scroll, and I talk about this. Now, if you go to page, let's see, page, let's see, that's page 20, and it says, question, how can right knowledge liberate you, right? Because that's what we're talking about, liberate. And that's the 144,000 will have the knowledge to liberate ourselves, right? Question, answer. Right knowledge is controlled by the forces of nature residing on the plane of force. The plane of force is the next dimensional plane or dimensional vibration up, right? You have to tap into the plane of force, and you can only do that through the rituals, okay? Most students of Wu-Sabat are not consistent with the rituals. All you gotta do is start asking them, and ask how many people meditate every day, do the prayers every day, do chanting every day. You'll find that they're not doing it because life has distracted us so much. We don't even have time, or we forget about it. We get caught up in our day-to-day pursuits. And the longer we're neglecting these things, the longer we're going to be in suppression and under control of the Mukasa. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And that's why I'm trying to help everybody comprehend our whole goals. That's why I go over our core principles. I try to explain it every week. As we keep saying, there's no God coming out of the clouds to save anybody. We're going to have to save ourselves. We have to save ourselves. And it's only through right knowledge can you save yourself, developing your nine mind. And it takes spiritual work to develop your nine mind. It just didn't automatically come to you. It takes work and practice. And you have to put the principles of Wu-Sabat into practice, like the 9 Nuban guys I just read. You have to live these things. You have to, practice the dietary laws and the positive. And first of all, let me just say this. One of the biggest problems with Black people is the negative mind. That's one of our biggest challenges. We're negative. We love the slander and we love gossip. So I can tell you right now, if you can't conquer the negative mind, there's no way you're going to be able to develop the 9 mind. It's impossible. That's why it hasn't been accomplished. The master teacher's been teaching, but again, most students aren't getting it. I know because I've seen it personally over the 3 decades that I've been, a student myself. And I know how hard it's been for me. So it's sad, but it's a reality. This is one of the reasons why we need the land, so that we can have control over our lifestyle, so we can develop ourselves. That was the whole purpose of the master teacher set up the land, and we set up all the rituals on the land to help people resurrect. But what happened? We let the disagreeable ones take the land from us. That's why they took the land, to stop us from our mental resurrection, because the Mukasu knows the prophecies. And he's doing everything in his power to try to get an extension. This is something the master teacher said. They can get a 2,000-year extension. This is what they're fighting for. If they can prevent us from resurrecting. Let's keep going. Let's see. What says, will we ever get into the book of Lamb? If I haven't missed it, and do discussion about it. Okay. Yeah, we can definitely. This is Zamal asking about whether we're going to break down the book of Lamb. No, we haven't. I haven't gotten to the book of Lamb. That is something we can build on, but I haven't gotten to that book yet. Okay. So we haven't gotten it yet. Let's see what else we have. Nah, I didn't get that because right reason never leaves you. So something went really wrong. Okay. Well, then you guys see, because our ancestors are right there calling. It's like with my okay. Blah, blah, blah. And there is nothing we can do physically to develop the mind except for being in control of our thoughts. Meditate every day. You will get downloads. Okay. All right. So it looks like you guys, I guess, are building. And so just a reminder. So next week, I'm going to do question and answer classes dealing with the 9-bowl series that we went through in the last 4 weeks, right? So I do ask you guys to definitely watch the lectures. I keep asking, watch the lectures over again, write down specific questions so we can build on it, right? Because the goal, let me just say this. Information is only information. It doesn't become knowledge until one is able to apply it. Knowledge is information that is applied. I repeat, knowledge is information that is applied. And this is the reason why we as students of the master teacher have not resurrected yet, because we have a ton of information, but we have not put it into application, applied it, where it becomes knowledge, because knowledge means you know how to do a thing. Well, you can only know how to do a thing if you're actually doing it. Okay, just having information in your head and being able to spew it out here and there is not going to help us. We have to put into practice, and we need results. That's the ultimate thing. We must get results. Then we know. Then that's when you know. And that's why we're doing this, guys. Our goal is to help each other. That's our goal. We must help each other in this development. So again, next week we're gonna do question and answer classes pertaining to the series. Okay. So I hope this is help. I hope I'm helping. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to do the best I can. And so by all means, and guys, if you guys have questions during the week or anything like that, put them in the comments. That's another thing for people who are watching this and recording. Put questions and concerns in the comments, especially if you guys are going to have questions for next week. Put them in the comments. That way I can review them and we can go over those things next week's class, right? So that's of help. So it's definitely to put questions and concerns in the comments, and we definitely can go over those things. Okay. So I want to make that certain. So we're gonna wrap it up, guys. We're gonna wrap it up, and we're gonna end it with a prayer. We're gonna end it with a prayer, and then I'm gonna put on some music as an outro for you guys. Some Sabian artist, rap artist. I want to put on. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. So let me get into a prayer. And then, I want to end with this also. This is from the book. Let's see, what page is this? This is from the book. I'm sorry. The Proof, right, by Panabab Yanana. Okay, this is the proof. Okay, and this is something he put in the book, which is something in the nature books, right? This is actually, I believe, in the Holy Tablets. We put this in there, this concept, and this is a very important concept, guys, to know. Okay, it says the birth of chaos, right? Chaos in Sabaic is Tashash. Okay, Tashash. Says in the beginning were the sons, and the sons were within Fatur Fatar, which is natural nature, and the sons are natural nature. The sons, the true Kakabat, the stars, are Panatharu, the overseers, who grew absolute natural nature from and of omniverse, which is all, into universe, which is the all. Okay, so that's a very important concept to know, right? That we come from the sons. We keep saying that. And our ancestors always knew that we were children of the suns. Our spirit force 9 ether comes from the suns that grew the universe itself. Yes, we're gonna do Bible interpretations. The last question, yes, not next week, but the week after next, we're gonna break down the Bible interpretations, right? So we're gonna do the Bible interpretations and explanations in 2 weeks. So next week we're gonna do question and answer classes dealing with the 9-ball, and then a week after that we're gonna go into the Bible interpretations and explanations, and we're gonna break that down. Okay, because that is very important. So we're definitely going to go through that. All right. So now we're going to get into our prayers. We're going to end the classes for Sal and Sabek for Sal. So we're going to end for Sal with a namaz. Okay. Abdul Kalam namasat will bazun amag kasam and a fa pa pot. Anuki Jawef pa ashuk impa pot. Wu kala ashuk kawun Jawef naya. Anuki kasamun impa pot. Wu pa pot kawun kasamun im naya. Anuki wahu ama pa pot. Wu pa pot kawun wahu ama naya. Nakuk kador naju ama kasamun impa pot. Wu khabu ama shikasun. Nakuk kador kawan kala pafaf nakuk daya Jawef pa pot. Ama wasu ama dayani kawun lake bakui Jawef pa pot. Anuki yababi nafasni. Pa'aput Kawun, Anuki. Pa'aput Kador, Nakuk Kador. Pa'aput Amu, Nakuk Amu. Lahehun Manehnun. Layehun Manehnun. Anhumata Karahun. Anhumata Karakun. Anhumata Karanun. Anhumata Jawef Naya. Anhumata Naya Wu Anuki Hum. Ye Ashuk Re. Asmua Jayenun. Ye Notaro Akfuknun. Anunata Kharaukum. Ye Notaro Akfuknun. Akfuknun Akfuknun. Ye Notaro Nun. Anun. Atun. Atun. Amun. Jennifer. Wadu. And until next week, guys, I want you guys to be safe, right? I definitely want you guys to be safe. And I bless you all.
If I grab every color here and mix it in a bowl, which would be inclusive of green, I come up with black. That's why you've been trained to see black as a color. You've been trained to see black as a color because they've also given you a definition of black, which is swarthy and bad and ugly and evil and Dracula. And you know what I'm saying? That's a psychological profiling that they've done to monotype, a stereotype. They make me and you into one kind of character. Bad. They call us stereotypes. Stereo is true. We are stereo beings, God and man, not mono beings. But they have the whole world thinking all black people, liars, thieves, crooks, etc., etc., etc. All that is shaded around identifying black as a color and not as a state of existence on which colors are born. Because blackness is there. Now, whether stars are shining or not, blackness is there. Regardless of the colors of the stars, white stars, red stars, green stars, blue stars, depending on their illumination qualities and what reflects off them, the blackness will remain. When you cut the lights on in the room, the blackness remains. When you cut the light off in the room, the energy is still in the room, unless you go downstairs and throw the fuse box. So the energy of the light is in the room, but the black won't allow it to shine until you turn on a certain switch. Fuse certain things to be the same at all times. But all the other colors are in the light. When the light is on, chaos stops.
I am Melanie.